Hi, good evening. Welcome to the August 10th, 2020 CCSD59 Board of Education meeting. I'd like to introduce Board President Janice Krinsky to begin the agenda.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for listening in to our board meeting. We appreciate the involvement of our community members. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. It is now 7:02 p.m. and roll call, please.
Krinsky.
Present.
Garlovich.
Present.
Lang.
Present.
Mancia.
Present.
Shirley present. Reed.
Present.
And Schumacher. Mardell.
So I think we logged out there, student.
Mardell.
Present.
Okay.
All right.
Author.
Good. We have a full house. Now we are, I can't see the whole agenda and I don't have mine up yet.
Public comment?
My apologies.
Pledge of Allegiance would be next, but I think we're going to dispense with that.
Okay. Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is comments and suggestions from the public. We have only received one comment, which is an audio message, so we'll play it now.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a public comment during today's board meeting. Based on last week's board meeting from August 3rd, there was an agreement on the need to display which data is used in making decisions for the return to school plan. What is the leadership team using going forward? Can we challenge ourselves for an option to return in person versus delaying that possibility now through October 30th? As a reminder, in the last 10 days or so, we went from a well-prepared in-person with opt-in remote learning to now a small delayed start of only remote until at least October. Please recognize the drastic change of pace. While nothing has changed since the state has updated our lives to phase 4. A simple data table of here's where we are now, here's where we need to be for in-person learning to resume is critical to ensure the district is continually working towards providing a timely path forward based on facts versus whimsical decision-making because individuals do not feel comfortable or safe. Comments such as rising cases or various factors are just too vague. The community, as well as parents who were presented choices, which was developed by our own leadership team, now feel alienated by the district's rapid change to remote-only learning. By providing thresholds the leadership team and the board is using and should be actively acting on, it may help to bridge the frustration and rebuild some trust that's been eroded between parents, teachers, and the district. At the end of the day, we have an obligation to provide our students a strong foundation by providing them a proper education, which we all know is best done in person. And these steps taken over the last few weeks have just not been transparent or equitable. Thank you. Katarzyna Garlewicz, parent of first grader.
Okay, thank you. That is the only comment that we received from anyone. There are no written comments to present tonight, so we will move on. It looks like we have no presentations, so we will go to 6.0 discussion items, and we're looking at the discussion of appointment of Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund Authorized Agent.
Like a resolution?
No, this is not an action item. It's a discussion item.
That's true.
Thank you, Board President Krinsky. Ron will talk a little bit about this piece, which is something that we do on an annual basis in terms of appointment. Ron?
Thank you, Dr. Fessler. So the IMRF is the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, which is the way our non-certified staff is funded for their retirement packages. Every district or municipality has to have one person being an authorized agent. So today was just a discussion item just for the board to be aware that hopefully for next board meeting, we need somebody to be that authorized agent. Vicky has been the person since she's been here. And now that I am the replacement, I'd like to be able to serve that capacity.
Well, I think that makes total sense because I think you're the only one that's truly qualified for that responsibility. Do we have any comments or questions from the board?
Hey Ron, this is Robert. Did by chance did you do this in your prior position as well, or is this going to be the first time?
I've done this before.
I think we've already set a precedent. We should just follow through the way we've been doing it.
Sure. Great. Okay. Any other comments?
No.
Okay, seeing none, let's move on to 6.02, discussion of permission to bid for vestibule project.
This is another discussion item. We have 3 buildings currently, if you see Brentwood, Claremont, and Juliet Low, where we are looking to improve the school safety, like making sure that people can not just get in or out of our schools without any sort of information or anything we have on them, as well as it just being, with the way that things are nowadays. So we'd like to go over possibly having this out to bid to see the numbers and making sure it falls within our budget. We've been seeing numbers ranging from 2.5 million and then recently heard upwards of $4 million, which really didn't make me happy. Okay. So I'd like to see what the numbers would turn into if we actually were to do it. And then if they are high, why were we quoted at a certain number, being like 2.5 to begin with? And just because we get bids doesn't mean we actually have to do the project.
Hi, Ron. It's Courtney. First of all, welcome, because I think this is the first time I've spoken with you directly. So welcome to District 59.
Thank you.
We're really excited to work with you. So I did have a couple just background questions on this. If you could update us and bring us up to speed, because I believe these 3, if I recall correctly, didn't fall into the health, life, safety category to be paid for under the bond. So where are we looking at this money to come from?
This money would come under state and local funding.
Okay.
The district has worked on their plan for their 10-year and their 5-year health, life, safety, as well as facilities plan. And all of our buildings will fall under this at some point or another.
Courtney, the finance committee has not discussed, though. I mean, since we don't have the actual dollars, the finance and facilities committees this year, we're going to run some joint committees so that we can kind of talk through implications, because so much of the work is overlapped. But since we don't have the final numbers, we're not quite sure where we'll take that money from. We know that we will, as we look at the budget that we're passing, we will have some level of a surplus this year. We're anticipating that, but again, with everything that's happening, and there may be funding delays, that could also have implications on funding decisions. So this is just to get permission from the board to actually get the bids. When we go out for the bids, is yet to be determined. I think we want to do, like Ron said, we want to do a little more research on this, because some of the information that we received last year is in conflict with and it's only initial conversations that we've had with the architects this year. So we need to dig a little deeper into that. And once we have a more solid number and approach, we'll bring that back and discuss it at the Finance and Facilities Committee, and then bring I think a clear update. But right now it's just a lot of speculation because we don't have some of the details for costs.
Thanks. Okay, I appreciate the contextualization. And personally, I would support moving forward to get the bids. I definitely want to have further discussions about obviously where we're funding it and the other components. But since there is this discrepancy we don't understand, I would definitely support bidding and getting more information about the discrepancy.
Can I add something? So last year when we were working on this, we had an initial intention of this is never part of the health life safety bond issuance. These 3 schools are actually in compliance with state regulations for concerning safety and locked secured entrances. Now, our other buildings within the district have, where you have to come in the building, you get buzzed into the office first before entering the building. Where these 3 schools, you actually get buzzed in the building, you actually have access to the entire school before getting to the office. So the reason what this came down to was that for equity safeties and for, peace of mind, basically for many of us, that we had this extra layer of safety for our students and staff. When we were first working on this, the numbers we had were in the $2.4, $2.5 million range. And that was, based on last year, last year at this time discussion. So I definitely would like to know why the definite increase, because I don't think we've changed much in the scope of the project. If anything, we've kind of left it very exactly the same as it was. So when we do know that, Ron, I appreciate it. And yes, I do think we should go out to bid and see what comes back. I also want to know if we do bid this out, I have to see if we can bid it out all 3 at once and see if we get a better pricing from a perspective of having it all done all 3 at once by the same contractor, or if we want to bid it out individually.
I think we discussed doing all 3 at one time to try to get the best and most competitive pricing. Is that what you were thinking, Ron?
Yeah, correct.
This is Janice. I'd be interested in making sure that next time this information is presented, that we could see what the designs look like. It's been some time since I've seen them, and I'm not sure the whole board has seen them yet. So that would be my request.
Are the plans the same as what Mardell and I went and saw? Where did we go?
We went to Claremont and Juliet Low.
Juliet Low. When we were at Juliet Low, are they the same plans that we originally were shown? Were there any changes to those, Randy? Do you know?
I know that the different principals did meet with the architect and provided some input. And I don't know what changes got made from that, because like Janice, I haven't seen the changes, and we've been so wrapped up in the health life safety bonds for the last 9 months that and when we decided to put this in the back burner, kind of like I put on the back burner, let it sit there. So I've not seen the changes in the architectural plans since then.
Because I have the original plans.
Yeah, and there's probably been changes since then. I know that they met with the principals at those schools to get some input.
Okay.
And also, obviously, I think you'll take it up in committee first before we come to the board, before you come to the board.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help.
And Courtney, one clarification for you, Courtney. We initially were planning to take this out of reserves. The initial plan was to take this out of reserves. Now, that was part of last year's discussion. So now, the committee will discuss and see if how we come up with the funding for this, if we decide to proceed with it.
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, I recall the conversation, and I'm thinking, in light of our projected surplus, if that remains amid everything with coronavirus, it may be worth a further discussion. But yeah, thanks.
Was the estimate of the 2.5 to 4 million, was that per school or for all 3?
All 3. Yeah, all 3. We'll bring the architect to our next meeting. Again, I think the conversations we had with them have been casual conversations versus really sharing the why. So we'll have them bring the most updated prints, and we'll have that dialogue with them to see, if the numbers are indeed significantly more, and if that's the case, what's the cause? Like, it can't just be construction escalation. That's just too big of an increase from from this point in time to 6 months ago. So we'll do that, and then we'll certainly bring that back and report to the board.
Yeah, that'll be helpful. As far as just going to bid, I'm for it. It doesn't lock us in anything, and we get to kind of see what the pricing will be.
I would
Yeah,
agree.
me too.
And one thing we do want to add is that we did some work at Claremont this summer in preparation for this secured entrances. We did about $40,000, $50,000 in abatement of asbestos in preparation for this construction.
Was it at that side entrance, Randy?
And it's not the main entrance.
It is the main entrance, but it's on that side.
Yeah,
It's in the original classroom over to the
right,
side.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? The only thing I'd like to add, this is Janice again, is to make sure that if the architects are going to bring hard copy documents to hand out, could we please get them in advance and have them delivered to our homes? I can't hear a response. Is that okay?
I will contact the architects.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Seeing no other questions or comments, let's move on to the consent agenda number 7.0. Can we have a motion to for the consent agenda?
Is there anyone who wants to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Well,
Yeah.
usually we make a motion first.
Then
So
I move to approve the consent agenda. 7.01, approval of minutes prior meeting. 7.02, disbursements resolution. 7.03, acceptance of financial reports. 7.04, acceptance of recommendations and the human resources report. 7.05, approval to destroy 18-month-old or older closed session recordings. And 7.06, approval of press 104 updates.
This is Randy, I'll second.
Thanks, Randy. Okay. Chris,
Aye.
sorry, Chris, I should have said your last name. Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli. Oh, aye.
whoever she is.
Hello, Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher. Mardell? Mardell?
Is
Let's
there computer frozen?
Oh,
It looks like her screen is frozen. I'll go check.
And Krinsky.
aye.
And the motion passes.
All right, thank you. You can mark Mardell as absent for that purpose of that, since she couldn't answer us. We're up to 8.0 action items. The first item is adoption of budget fiscal year 2020, 2021. Will someone please make the motion?
This is Randy, I'll make the motion. Whereas the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 59, Cook County, Illinois, has caused to be prepared in a tentative form a budget for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2020. And the Secretary of the Board has made the same conveniently available for public inspections for at least 30 days prior to final action thereon. And whereas due notice that said tentative budget was available for public inspection has been given in full compliance with the law, and whereas a public hearing was held as to such budget on the 3rd day of August 2020, notice of said hearing having been given at least 3 days prior hereto as required by law, and all other legal requirements complied with. And be it resolved that on the 10th day of August 2020, the Community College School District Board of Education does authorize.
You can say as presented if you
As
don't want to
present-
read the whole thing.
Yeah, just scroll down, as presented.
Thank you,
Courtney, I'll second the motion.
thank you. Roll call, please.
Okay. Garlovich,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli. Aye, Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher.
Her battery went dead on her computer, so we're firing up her computer right now. She'll be back momentarily.
So am I doing absent?
Yeah, just mark her absent.
And Krinsky.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're up to 8.02, adoption of the e-learning plan.
I'll make the motion.
Robert?
Yep.
Okay.
Be it resolved. Oh, lost it. Give me 1 second.
I hate when that happens.
There we go. Be it resolved that on the 10th day of August 2020, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education adopt the proposed e-learning plan.
Do we have a second?
I'll second, Patty.
All right. It's
All right.
as presented. Roll call, please.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher, Krinsky,
Aye.
and Karlovic.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Man, you're getting really multilingual with your pronunciation there.
I know it's still not good, but I'm working on it.
Oh, no, it's.
That was
it's
really
great.
good.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
All right. And I like the Mancia,
Oh, that one I've had.
The
I don't know what it is.
the Castilian way. Okay. 8.03, do we have a motion for 8.03 approval of the 2020-21 return to school plan and COVID-19 board policy?
This is Courtney. I can make the motion.
Okay, Courtney.
Be it resolved by the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 59, Cook County, Illinois, as follows, with the respect to the opening and operation of the district's offices, facilities, programs, and schools for the 2020-2021 school year in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Shall I say as presented, or would you like me to read the provisions?
I think you should read the provisions in this motion. This will go to board policy.
Okay. Number one, the plan for the opening and operation of the district's offices, facilities, programs, and schools for the 2020-2021 school year, substantially in the form presented by the superintendent and entitled 2020-21 Return to School Plan and dated July 20th, 2020 is hereby approved. The superintendent and the superintendent's designees are hereby authorized and directed to implement and enforce the plan and are further authorized to require students, staff, parents, visitors, and other participants in the district's programs to comply with the plan and with the directives of the superintendent and the superintendent's designees implementing and enforcing the plan. 3, the superintendent is hereby authorized to modify the plan from time to time to conform to the requirements of or guidance from any entity with authority over the district, including but not limited to the Governor of Illinois, the Illinois Department of Public Health, the Illinois State Board of Education, the Illinois High School Association, and the Cook County Department of Public Health, and as otherwise appropriate to facilitate the operation of the schools and the safety of students, staff, visitors, and other participants in the district's programs. Any substantive changes to the plan shall be made in consultation with the president of the board and then promptly reported to the board, which may affirm, modify, or disapprove of the changes. The changes shall, however, remain in full force and effect until such time as the board acts unless otherwise required by law. 4, this resolution and the plan as may be modified from time to time pursuant to number 3 above are adopted and are to be implemented and enforced in the exercise of the discretionary powers granted to the board by section 10-20 and 10-20.5 of the Illinois School Code and any other applicable law. The plan constitutes rules adopted by the board pursuant to section 10-20.5 of the school code, which shall be filed in the district's central administrative office and posted on the district's website. In accordance with board policy 4.180, pandemic preparedness, the plan and the authority granted to the superintendent and the superintendent's designees by this resolution supersede any policy or other rule of the board to the extent any such policy or rule is inconsistent with the plan. 5, this resolution shall be in full force and effect upon adoption. Therefore, be it resolved that on the 10th day of August, 2020, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education hereby approves the 2020-21 Return to School Plan and COVID-19 Board Policy.
Okay, do we have a second?
I can second it, Patty.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Roll call, please.
All right. I believe I am at Mencia.
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher? Okay, Krinsky,
Aye.
Gerlovich,
Nay.
Nay? Okay. And Lang?
Aye. And Schumacher says aye.
Okay, and the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to 9.0, special interest topics, FOIA requests.
Good evening. Since the last report to the Board of Education, there have been 4 FOIA requests, all of which have been completed appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, sorry, Janice. Ross, I saw you added like a legal cost sign to that near the top. I know it's something you're starting to track. Is it something we want to put on per FOIA request at all, or just kind of like keep a summary total going?
That was something that we started a couple years ago, and I'm happy to report that it has been much easier to calculate in the last 6 to 10 months. So we don't typically put that per FOIA, but we are in the typical range of requests and responses and costs at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yep.
Can you guys hear me? You're all frozen except for us.
Can
Oh
hear.
boy, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, we can.
Okay, okay, good, thank you. So we're up to 10.0, new and continuing business and announcements. Does anybody have any new and continuing business and announcements?
Janice, I just actually wanted to speak to something briefly related to the return to school plan.
Okay,
Simply because it was raised in the public comments, a question about what criteria the administration and the board will look to in terms of returning to school. And that was something I was interested in seeing further information on as well. And I just want to point out that there is an explanation in the revised plan which indicates that the district will convene an advisory focus group to help guide decisions and actions for the upcoming school year, and that they will review the following data as part of the criteria that this advisory focus group will consider in making their decision. And that includes the Illinois State Board of Education and Illinois Department of Public Health guidance, the Restore Illinois Phase 4 or Phase 5 guidance, the Region 10 Illinois Department of Public Health COVID-19 infection positivity rate with a goal of less than or equal to 8%, the Region 10 same positivity rate 7-day rolling average, the Region 10 public health local ICU beds available with a goal of having at least 20% availability, as well as surrounding schools plans and specific staffing needs for in-person and remote learning transition. And it looks like the timeline for this is that oversight committee will update the board by October 7th. And then this discussion and recommendations will be made at the October 13th meeting, and board will determine next steps. So for me, this was a key part of updating the plan so that we had as much concrete information as possible about how we're going to make that next decision. So I just wanted to make sure the person who gave public comment, as well as the rest of the public, was aware of that.
thank you, Courtney, good point. I think that I would find it useful if, as part of the facts that are being presented around COVID-19, that more explicit discussion like that be actually spelled out on the website, and that we don't wait or have it buried in the document, because it's definitely something that multiple people have asked about. And I think that would be helpful, because we pretty much know what we're looking at, and we can say it, and we can even give the link to the appropriate websites.
Yeah, to tag off of that, I'm sorry to interrupt. I know Mr. Garlevich had made a suggestion. Sorry, I'm not as good as Patty. A suggestion that I found useful at a recent meeting of possibly having a dashboard to that effect. So I don't know that we need to construct something sophisticated, but I agree with Janice that if there's a way to sort of track that or give quick information, high level to the public about where we are with those key criteria. I know as a parent, trying to set up my childcare options, which I'm currently furiously doing, it would be helpful to just know week to week, where are we with this key criteria? So I'm not going to presume the best way to present that, but I would defer to the administration on how would be good to communicate that out in a way the public can readily see.
So just to be clear for everyone listening, this was part of, so the document that I have right now is included in what we're asking the board to approve. So this is the back to school, return to school plan. So within that, and I shared this with the Board of Education last week, we laid out the return to school update. So this is the information from last Monday's meeting that we discussed. We also then talked about the elements that we would look to include for the decision-making piece. The new piece that we did add is that over the course of last week, that the superintendent's leadership team discussed the possibility of bringing a focus group together of parents, of staff, of administrators, and a board member to look at, again, these are the elements that we discussed at last Monday's meeting as the drivers for decision-making, or the data that we would look at. And then we included the plans for next steps. And again, Chris at last Monday's board meeting asked that we put a dashboard together that laid this out. So we did that work, and that's presented here as well. So just to clarify, these were all things that were requested last Monday from the board that the SLT and the planning teams did over the course of this week. And now the board just approved those tonight. So we also have, I shared in last week's update, we have a landing page for all of our coronavirus COVID information that's really well detailed, well documented with a lot of information. This will go there as well. So any parents or staff who need updated information, that has been in place since March. So we have a designated site. Janice actually asked if we would do some FAQs, a section for that. We have just finished that. So if it's not added now, it'll be added tomorrow. So all that stuff is available at that website. So if you go on our district webpage, it's right on the landing site for the coronavirus resources. So just wanted to be clear that these things will be shared now that they've been approved by the Board of Education.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fessler and your team. I haven't checked that page in a couple of weeks at least, so I will be happy to look forward to seeing that information, and I appreciate you taking a lot of effort in making the decision process and the information more available to anybody who's interested.
I also wanted to make a quick comment, if I could, too, on the reopening plan. Last spring when we shut the schools down, we applauded our staff for being flexible, for being creative in trying to find ways to adjust with remote learning. Seeing a lot of the comments that we've received, or even just nationally with teachers, I think we still need to applaud them for the work that they're doing. It is not easy. Our staff, are planning, are back in the buildings today, planning for the start of the school year next week, and it's turned upside down. And they still have to be flexible. They still have to be creative. They're doing an amazing job, and we need to continue to acknowledge that and applaud that.
I agree.
I agree too. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because our staff really is the backbone of society. I mean, they're the ones that educate our kids, and they're the ones that therefore support democracy and all the institutions that we care about. So they really matter. And I want to thank all you teachers who are listening, because you are in our hearts and in our minds through this process.
Can I make a comment, Janice?
Of course. Go ahead, Mardell.
I just want to also add on to that I'm very happy that the district did a whole week of training of our teachers.
Yeah.
And I think that is what was missing last year. And I hope that this definitely works. And I think along the way, if we decide that it wasn't sufficient, then you should actually put in another day or two of training to pick up any of the pieces that didn't get taken care of in the first place. Because I think this is crucial. If the teachers are going to do what they're supposed to do, they have to know exactly how to do it virtually. And if there are any remisses along the way, then we'll have to fill it in. But I'm very happy that they got the training that they did. That was excellent.
Dr. Fessler and Maureen, I believe it's true that there will be additional training because there are other days set aside by the state.
Yes, we do. We have remote learning planning days scheduled at regular intervals. We currently have them scheduled. I think the next one is September 25th. So that will be a day similar to these days, just devoted to collaboration and professional development, as well as our PLT sessions. So we also will be using PLT sessions. So this will be an ongoing process, not just 1 week and we're done.
Good.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think our teachers are really doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I'm glad the district is doing everything we can to support them in the efforts that they're expending on behalf of our students and families.
Thank you, Maureen.
Sure.
Yes,
Janice,
thank
can I
you.
ask a quick question? This is Chris.
Sure.
Do we have those final registration figures from the window that closed last week on Wednesday and how everyone signed up and how that all shook out?
I can jump in on that if that's okay. I have been monitoring it. Originally, we were going to close last week. I think we've kept it open, and actually it might still be open. I pulled the data yesterday, which I can add a link to the agenda or share with the board. I think we were at 78% response rate. I don't have that document up right now, but we'll pull it up. I think we're still in that 58 to 42% range of 58% in person to 42, but I'll confirm that in a minute or two.
Tom, real quick, this is
Thank
Ben.
you.
It's at 56.4% for the in-person, and then 43.6% for remote academy. And that's at 78.2% of respondents. And as Tom mentioned, we did want to keep that window open. We had advertised closing Wednesday, but our buildings are continuing to reach out to families to try to make sure we get as many people as possible through that process.
Thank you, Ben.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for that? Okay, I have 2 items under new and continuing business and announcements. I was able finally to get a look at the search firms that the individual board members voted to talk to. And there were 3 clear lead firms, and they are BWP and Associates, Hazard Young, Atia and Associates, and School Exec Connect. So I am going to go ahead and contact them this week and ask them some of the basic questions that have come up. And then I'll ask Cindy to set up some Zoom interview times. And Mardell and I are going to take a look at the questions, and then we'll send you out a final list of what we're thinking about. That doesn't mean that we can't ask them other things as things come up or as we think of them. But we, of course, want to have a core group that we ask all the different firms. One of the things that I did want to bring up quickly now is that Robert had suggested we see if we could get a non-exclusive contract so that we could contract with more than one company using a model where they would really get paid for finding the superintendent that we ultimately end up hiring. Now, one of the reasons I think they may not go for that, but I will certainly ask them, because it does give us some flexibility if they're willing to work that way, is that there's really a limited pool of superintendent candidates in this area, and they're all likely to be sending us the same ones because there just aren't that many. So trying to have 2 or 3 firms working that way may not be particularly effective. So I'll talk to them and see what they have to say, though, but that's my reservation about trying to do it that way.
And then just adding on to that, I had already sent out to everybody a copy of the list that I prepared and that you added on to, but apparently didn't get to everybody. So I sat down today before coming over here and typed it into an email, and I sent it out to everybody today. So you should have gotten that list. Again, everybody except Robert. Robert, yours came back to me that I didn't have your proper email address. So I'll have to get that from you.
Okay. I'll email you right now, Mardell.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mardell. So Mardell and I will take a look at the questions, and then, we may modify them, and we'll certainly want to look at them to see which ones I want to use when I actually talk to the firms to start with.
It's a long
Janice?
list to use them all.
Are we expanding the committee at all after you and Janice do this? Are you and Mardell do this part?
Yeah, you will all be sitting down to hear what they have to say when we interview the search firms.
Okay.
And so we'll have a choice to make with the three of us. They should take about 45 minutes each, and we can interview all three hopefully in one night and be done with it, and then have some discussion. If we don't like what we heard, or it causes us to have follow-up questions, I can certainly call them, or we can set up another meeting. So, we want to make sure we do the best we can. And I want to ask them questions like how they see that they will operate, and maybe even get some of that out of the way in the beginning. So, for example, will they help us establish a job description? Will they be open to helping us with a model for how we involve the community, and what they've seen that works well or what doesn't, that kind of thing. So I think we're going to be pretty happy with any one of those, but we'll definitely get a chance to talk to them.
Patty, were you going to work with us or not?
Yes,
Okay.
I would love to.
Well, Mardell, we can't do that, because once we have three, then it has to be an OMA issue, and we have to have public meetings.
So when we all sit down and look at the groups and
That'll be your
firms and the questions and all that, we all will be able to do it.
Yes, yes. And you certainly can send your individual comments either to Mardell or to me, not both. And we will be working together to figure out any of the logistics.
I'd like to suggest that you send any additional questions to me, because that's the only thing I've been working on so far. And then when we get to working with the firms, Janice will be the one who will be contacting them. There's no point in both of us doing the same thing.
Right. So we divided and conquered, but Mardell and I will work on the questions, or I'll take a look at them and make a proposal back to you, Mardell, about
Right.
what I'm going to do this week. But I definitely want to get it done.
Suggestions. We may not need all of the questions. Some of them are kind of redundant.
Well, that's why I want to go through them with you and then cut them down to a logical number to see if we can, synthesize the key points. So, so are there any questions about that part? Okay, hearing none.
Janice,
Yeah.
you gotta give more than 2-second time to let people respond.
Sorry.
I'm a little concerned where the process is gonna go, because I know both Patty and I have expressed interest in being part of the search of the actual superintendent. So I am concerned that how are we, going to, what's the decision of who's gonna be involved at what points and stuff like that?
We're all going to be involved. We're all going to be involved in that. This is just contacting them to set up the initial meetings. And then it's going to be open to all board members. And we will talk with them, and we will formulate together what it is we're looking for and all the other questions that we have around it.
But how do we get around? If we're all involved in that and we're asking questions and meeting with them, how does that work? With OMA then? Those become closed sessions because they're personnel decisions?
Yes, there will be closed sessions, and we will bring back to you what our opinions are of what we felt after we asked these questions. And then after we give you all of the information that we have on the firms, we'll all talk about it, and you can help us decide. We won't make the decision, the whole board will.
Can I
Right.
ask, so, I mean, I'm assuming these are going to be virtual meetings? And
Yes,
will they be, and will they be recorded? And will they be able to share with us so we can see how they responded to the questions and stuff like that? So we can watch those videos related to the interviews and stuff of selecting one of these three candidates.
but you'll be in that process. That's going to be for all of us. We're all going to interview them.
Oh, okay. We're going to interview the three search firms, or the
Correct. Correct. About 45 minutes each. They will be Open Meetings Act covered, so they will be open to the public if people want to sit in and listen. But I will talk to Aries and make sure I know when or if we can go into closed session, because obviously there's sensitivity in talking with superintendents that are already working somewhere, or people that maybe are not yet superintendents but have a lot of experience. So I think that would probably be enclosed, but I do have to find out from Aries what the procedure is. But this first part, we're all going to interview all three.
Okay. Thank
All
you. Sorry for had the misunderstanding.
No, it's okay. I'm glad we clarified it. I mean, this is part of the reason I'm discussing it. Are there any other questions about what's going to happen with these three companies?
No.
Okay. There's one more thing that I wanted to discuss, and it was a follow-up to the conversations that we had at the last meeting. And my question is around school safety. And I feel pretty comfortable with everything that we're doing, but I did want to find out where we are as far as the air and the HVAC systems for filtering the air and how that works. So do we have any information on that?
I think there's a construction update later on that Ron's going to share, but if he wants to start sharing it ahead of time, we can. But there's a thing from Ron under report of the superintendent's team. There's a construction update at that point.
Okay, and that's going to cover that, then that's absolutely fine. Thank you for pointing that out. Are there any other new and continuing business and announcements that anyone would like to make?
Just to add on that, will that report also cover the status of the PPE purchases? And if not, what is the status of that?
You can, when we get to that point, board members can ask any questions they want.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions then now? Okay, we're going to go to 11.0 reports of the Board of Education.
Thank you. We have one report, which is a construction update, but it sounds like.
Wait, no, not the superintendent's team, Board of Education. Sorry, you're jumping the gun. I know you want to share that information because it's all positive and great. I hope anyway. I have one report of the Board of Education, and that is that I happen to sit on the NSSEO governing board with members that sit on that board from 7 other districts. And one of them, Anna Klimkowitz, is on the District 211 high school board. And she also happens to work at Northwest Compass, which used to be CEDA until they had a falling out. And they do a lot of, it's a nonprofit that does a lot of support to families and individuals who are in crisis, whether they're homeless, whether they have food insecurity, they need help finding a job, looking at supporting at-risk youth and so on. And Anna called me and said they received a grant from a private foundation that can be used to provide food to families in need. And she asked me to sit down with their executive director, whose name is Sonia Ivanov. And I thought immediately, I'm not really the one that they should be talking to. So I reached out to Katie and we actually called her, and she, of course, did the heavy lifting. I really just sat there because I made the connection. Well, anyway, it's really exciting that we may very well be able to get quite a bit of food support, boxes of food for our families who are in need. And they were very excited about it as well. And so Katie's team of fabulous community outreach specialists are going to be meeting with them to figure out what the process should actually be. and they can hopefully service up to 70 families on a bi-weekly basis. So that was really exciting for me, and I know Katie was excited. So I don't know if that was a report that Katie was going to give, but I guess I jumped the gun on that. Any other reports of the Board of Education?
Yeah, I got two. One is from the Education Foundation. I think the donations that the community has given between staff members and community members and other families and stuff like that, it's been approximately almost $12,000 has now been donated from the Opportunity Fund for families. Does that sound about right, Katie? I think she's nodding yes. So okay. So that's good news. You know, to see that the community is stepping up. So that's the good news. I also want to add that the facilities and finance committees had a kind of a joint meeting. Was it 2 weeks ago or a week ago?
Yeah.
Basically, one thing we decided on, and one thing that was agreed upon, that we're going to have almost back-to-back finance and committee meetings. The finance meeting will be at 3:30, and the facility meeting will be at 4:30, and they'll be every Monday before a board meeting. And it'll be open to the public and stuff like that. And one reason for going down that path was to kind of lighten the load of for the community members. That they only need to be there one day. Board members need to be there one day. Ron makes Ron available one day instead of multiple days for Ron and stuff like that. So any question related to that can be sent to Ron, but there'll be the Monday before every board meeting. There'll be a finance and finance and a facility committee meeting back to back.
I'm happy with the idea. I think it's a good idea.
So you changed the time because the one email I saw said 4:30 and 5:30.
Well, yeah, the finances is 3:30 to 4:30. The facilities is 4:30 to 5:30.
Okay, that's moved an hour earlier then from what the email that I saw said, but that's great. So if that works for everyone, I think that's perfect. And I appreciate the work that you all that are serving on those committees put in to work through all the details and bring them back to the board for deliberation. Very good, thank you. So are there any other reports of the Board of Education? Okay, seeing none, then we're on to 12.0 reports of the superintendent's team, and now we get our construction update.
So it sounds like there may be other questions beyond the construction update. So board members, if you have any related questions, feel free to ask them. And then other members of SLT can also weigh in, Katie, Ross, Tom, Ben, etc. But if you would start out, Ron, a construction update with what's currently happening, and then we'll take any questions.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Dr. Fessler. So the first thing I wanted to put on the board's radar is that work has gone according to plan. In fact, I think I commend not just Albert, but also CTS for all the work that they've put in. They're going to be continuing to do a great relationship with phase 2. So there's chiller and AC work that is being finalized this week at Bird, Rupley, and Grove. The initial plan was for that work to be done last week, but there's always going to be a hiccup or two. So what they're doing is going through the rooftop units, through the chillers. They're fine tuning it. They're just doing your typical work that actually, I'm actually shocked as to how little they have left to do. We're also going to start going through some of the punch list items as well, to go through the different facilities to make sure that we can hold every vendor accountable if there's something that's missing. That's one thing that I think we're all big on here, and we're going to make sure that. So I'm excited with that. Albert and I are also meeting with iWave tomorrow. And I know that was something that the board seemed to have some interest in regarding construction and airflow, actually. Janice, when we talked about that. So they're going to come in here, demo some products. But it looks like everything is pretty much good to go for classrooms, and as well as from RTUs and everything else. Like, end of the week, we should be fine. As for the air, I wanted to talk a little bit about MERV. We're at MERV 13. So what it does is it cleans out, it filters. So the higher the MERV number, the better. of a filter that it is. So it goes anywhere from 1 to 20. Anything from like 15 on up, you'll find in like surgery offices. You'll find them in anything where they have to have like just pure air. What we're looking at is a MERV 13, and a MERV 13 coming into the building would get pretty much lint, pollen, there's dust, pet dander, smoke even, bacteria, and even some virus carriers. So that's the type of stuff that's coming into the district and that we're working on right now. The current filters are actually doing a fantastic job, but we are going above and beyond because at 59 here, I can't tell you enough how this team has actually tried to do everything they could to think about second and third times as to what could happen. So once that MERV 13 filter gets all of that air, it gets into the, into the HVAC system and whatnot, the air, and then it goes to a MERV 10, which is still higher than what we have right now. We're making sure that we're making it as clean as possible. And the reason why we're doing all of that, again, is to make sure the air is as clean as can be. Just because you have a higher number, though, doesn't mean it's a good thing. Because if you do too high of a number at times, it actually will restrict airflow, and then you'll have more issues. So that's why we're being very careful with the, what type of filters we're putting in and whatnot.
That's good. I mean, I think anything above 10, from what I read, 10 or above, is really very good for what we need in our buildings to make sure the air is clean. Because I know about the issue with too high a filter. We put HEPA filters into our HVAC system at home, and we were causing a serious problem with them because they couldn't pass through enough air. So absolutely, we need to get the right ones for what equipment we have. So with that, and given the plans that I've seen for, well, are you finished? Because I can wait on my question.
Oh, go ahead. You can. The question is fine.
Okay, because I guess it's just a statement that, given everything I've read about the sanitation procedures that we're undergoing, although there's still a couple of questions I understand that Dr. Fessler forwarded to you about, the actual schedule for cleaning and so on. I'm feeling quite satisfied and comfortable with the safety and security measures that we're putting in place in the buildings. And I feel as though even if someone comes in with an active case, they aren't going to be in a position to spread it so that the transmission rate is incredibly low, given what we know, what the research is on bathrooms, for example, and on being in hallways, just walking past someone in those kind of situations. So I'm not very concerned. In fact, even with my own health issues, I would be comfortable going into the school and working in my own classroom. So I just wanted to say that because I know that some teachers are still very concerned about that, but everything that I've read and everything that the district is doing, I think really makes it quite safe. And I'm quite comfortable with that, those decisions that the district is making. And I just wanted to get that on record. Are there any questions about this?
I got Ron, one thing we kind of talked about, I know we're doing the unit vents, which is the ones like the floor unit, like the units per room that can help take air from the inside, move it and exchange it with outside air. And I know we have 2 schools that we approved in the latest change in the HLS to get that done. And I know we talked about there's 2 other schools that we can do that on. Where do we stand on that? And did you put that in the 2020 budget?
We have some flexibility in the budget. My one concern, though, is always going to be, let's see what works with what we're doing right now. The last thing I want to do is just throw money at another school because one school has it and it doesn't work.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I know. I mean, does every school? We only have 2 other schools that have these unit vents in it. There's none other schools have them, correct?
Correct, but we're ready. I mean, we financially we should be good with it. It's just doing the follow-up and we want to buy, a product that works. So
So like we're going to evaluate the two buildings we're doing and see how that works. Okay.
Any
And
other-
Oh,
yeah, follow up. Oh, go ahead, Randy.
I was gonna say, I do know they're working hard, because I was driving past Bird School at 6:15 on Saturday morning, and the guys are already there getting their trucks and starting to do work already. And then they're there again on Sunday morning to get work on the units. So I know they're working.
Robert?
Dr. Fessler, any update on the PPE purchases with the masks?
I can start us off with that. So I can share that last week we went through our purchased items and made sure they got out to our buildings and were distributed this morning. So all of our staff received 2 cloth masks. We had specific PPE for nurses and specific PPE for some of our ed services staff as well. So that is all at buildings.
I had some questions too, and I don't know if that's going to get into the stuff that you've done, Katie. And it was a question about the guidelines for using the restrooms in the building. So for example, some of them have, most of them are single rooms, but some actually have stalls. And so I'm wondering if you're working on some guidelines for teachers and staff about using those facilities, making sure that they're one at a time, letting them know that the fan is running. The chance of any kind of transmission in that room is really negligible, according to the CDC and some other leading infectious disease specialists.
So what I would say to that is that if we are maintaining social distancing, which we have heavily promoted and are expecting of all of our staff, then that would not be an issue, because we would have people waiting and not being close to each other in the restrooms. What we are focused on are some cleaning procedures. So I know our operations team is working on increasing cleaning of touch points during the day, including restrooms.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just didn't know, because I know that staff have continuously raised that as a concern. And I just want them to feel reassured that based on the research about transmission in those spaces, as long as they're socially distancing, so they're only using it one at a time and so on, that there's, with the fan running, there's really no safety risk.
Yeah, the importance here is to maintain that social distance.
Right.
And that is every space in the building, including the restroom.
Well, ideally, there should be a minute between the person who was in there and the next person that goes in with the fan running. So it's like a minute, and then that's based on some of the research that the Chinese did with droplets getting in the air from toilet flushing. I know that sounds gross, but it happens to be a reality that they've studied, and basically there's nothing left in the air after a minute at the most.
I can look into it.
Sure.
I happened to get in on just a small part of a conference today with the federal doctor, Dr. Trump's federal doctor who gives all the information to us. I did not get it all specifically down, but I'm sure it'll be on the news again tonight if you want to watch and hear what he has to say, because he was being asked about whether children should be allowed to start in schools or not. So maybe that's something we should all take a look at.
Who is it?
I can't remember his name. What is the doctor with the glasses who's
Fauci, Dr. Fauci.
Yes, Dr. Fauci. Sorry, I forgot his name.
All right.
And he was being asked questions specifically about students coming to school and so forth. So I think it might be something we want to hear.
Okay. We are looking at what? It went away.
I can jump in actually based on the earlier question. It's actually a pretty easy report. I ran a report and updated the data as of 7:45 tonight. So this is the parent registration process for in-person and remote as of this evening. As Mr. Gray mentioned, we're going to keep that open. So we're continuing to collect responses from families on a daily basis. So this tells you, how many have responded, what those responses are, what percentage of that response, and then how it works overall. You can see, I think Juliet Lowe is leading the way with 90, is that 99? I can't quite see, but 99.3% of families have responded, I think is leading the way. And even our lowest numbers, and it looks like to be over 65%.
Hey, Tom, this is Chris. Quick question. Why is the disparity between, let's say, Juliet Lowe at 99 versus John Jay at 63? Are buildings doing different things, or is it the same process, that just happens the way it works?
I think as we shifted from where we needed this information to actually assign kids to classes, some buildings were ahead of that game, and we're not as aggressively seeking out those responses. I think also the population, second language population of buildings oftentimes determines what level of response rates we have. So we are still seeking them out. We're just, originally we had planned this week to be making a phone call to every single family to see what their choice was, thinking next week we had to implement that choice. But we've paused on that piece, although we're still collecting that info, just not as aggressively.
Thank you.
Hey, Tom, and the numbers, I'm trying to remember the first time we saw this chart. Have the numbers been consistent? Do you see them kind of the gap, shortening, widening? What's the analysis here?
They've been quite consistent, probably the last week, in that mid 50s to mid 40s range. It bumps up a little bit and a little down. I think originally when we saw that initial question go out, it was very clear we had two groups that were quite, I either want in person or I'm going to be remote no matter what. And then we were more like 60-40, but it's been quite consistent in this range. I can't recall any time where we were 65-35. It's been at the most in the very low 60s and 40s as a separation.
I'm interested in taking a look at, if you've got it coded, how the response might be different for, say, Hispanic families or families of color, shall we say, rather than the rest of the population. I'm just curious only because the reports nationally are coming in that people of color are more likely to select remote. And that looks like it's the case, for example, with John Jay, making a guess based on the data that, and the data that's coming in is that Hispanic families are much more at risk with the virus, followed by Blacks more so than whites. And so I'm wondering if that's part of what we're seeing here.
Yeah, our original, the report I'm working off does not include demographics. Actually, you can only include so many fields when you pull information in a report like this out of Skyward. And most of what we were looking for was contact information, phone number 1, 2, 3, if we had to reach out. But I will work with Kathy Savage, who is just so skilled in organizing these reports, and we'll add a demographic field and rerun the data and organize it in that fashion.
Okay, that might also provide some direction or insight for what population we would be serving remotely, and there may be some special needs there based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get that together.
Sounds good. Thank you.
One more clarifying question. This is Chris. So on the remaining folks, that 22% or whatever, that the number that comes up of folks who hadn't responded either way, what happens on Monday, the 17th?
We will contact So basically so nothing connected to this, Chris, because again, we're in full remote. So we've run our class schedules and we've scheduled every kid who is registered. So tomorrow morning, all of our families will have access to their students' schedules. So they'll see what teacher they'll have for remote learning. As we progress into October and in early October, when we're going to do that first checkpoint to try to determine what's going to happen for November, if it looks like at that point we're going to go back to in-person, we will likely redo the entire process, because at that point people may have a different, we're anticipating based on some of the emails that we received, that people might have a different preference at that point. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I could see us possibly rerunning the choice selection because people may have had different choices. That said, though, if there are still 22% remaining, we'll contact each one of them individually to see whether they would want to remain in remote learning or move into the in-person options.
Got it. So the 78% is not representative of, that's not saying that only 78% of the people we expect to be enrolled for education are enrolled.
That's 78% of the people who are registered currently. So we've got all of our families that like in this total number, they've all registered. They just didn't make a selection for in-person or remote learning. So that's not as significant now, but we have scheduled every one of our students to a teacher at every building. And as I shared, and we shared this with our parents in the Friday communication and our staff, that we've went back to a traditional type of scheduling. So kids are scheduled with teachers from their home schools like they would have been in the past.
Just to clarify, this is Mardell. Even if people haven't responded at this point, we don't have to worry about it because every one of the children has been assigned to a teacher and will be starting virtual schooling education come in a week or so.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, can I ask a question? I know I asked this last week when we were looking at our numbers, just total enrollment. We had seen a decrease in total enrollment. Have we seen that numbers come up at all, or because I didn't really look at your screen too well?
No, that's okay. Actually, yeah, we continue to see an increase in enrollment. We're up to 5,999 as of right now. Although that is still down, I think about 450 from where we were at the start of the year. Actually, 424 from where we were at the start of the year last year.
So then my question is, how does that work? And maybe it's a question for Ron or for Art. Isn't some of our funding based on enrollment on the first day of school?
It's actually, the funding isn't based on first day of school. We do several attendance reports over the fall, but I think it's closer to November or 30-day enrollment or something like that they actually do the number. Janice has also requested just some data to try to figure out, where these pockets are. So once we get into the school year, 10 or 12 days, we'll start just putting some reports together to try to make sense of where the gaps are. But that number, Randy, isn't calculated until a little further into the fall.
Okay.
We're still tracking at the kindergarten level, about 100 less kids than we had last year.
Okay, so there's that. That's probably that's potentially 25% of it. Okay,
right. And another 126 at the ELC from where we did that 30-day report, as Dr. Fessler mentioned. So over half of it's at the preschool and kindergarten right now.
Okay.
And at our next finance committee meeting, we'll talk about the hold harmless clause and the evidence-based funding model, Randy, to see how, even if we do drop in our attendance, if the law protects us for that because of the hold harmless clause. So Ron will investigate that piece as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was also interested if we had students that had enrolled but then withdrew because of the remote plan.
The one thing I've noticed, I think when we started the report, we had 268 kids enrolled in the preschool, and that's down to 212 now. Now that could be a function of we have a required summer program for a number of our preschool kids that they stay enrolled in the school until they complete that program. So that's part of it. But I actually have seen that number drop almost every report by 1 or 2 kids. So it does appear that families maybe are deciding, you know what, we're just going to stay home and not enroll in preschool at all.
Well, and kindergarten is not required in this state anyway, so that may be part of what we're seeing with kindergartners. It'll be interesting to get the data, but you know, it's not going to change anything, so it's really not required.
But yeah, I'll rerun that data, get some demographic pieces and include it in the Friday update.
Thank you. Any other questions for reports of the superintendent's team?
One other quick update. As you know, we had staff report back to work today for the most part. There were a few buildings where the air conditioning wasn't completely working. So those staff had actually the choice to work remotely or to come into the building. We did run professional development sessions until about 2:30, at which time, when the tornado warnings and things were coming in, we asked staff to feel free to leave and head home to make sure that everyone was safe. But I think we had a great day of training sessions. I was in a couple of the buildings. Actually, I was in Grove where they're having some AC problems, but it wasn't throughout the building. So I think they're pretty well completed there. But Maureen or anyone else who was doing PD today, would you like to weigh in on your experiences with training sessions?
Sure, we had our initial one this morning with SLT, really, and then I was able to participate in a few others. Today, we tried not to overwhelm with too many sessions. Tomorrow, we pick up again we really have 3 sessions throughout the week that are specifically focused on remote instruction. One tomorrow, one Wednesday, one Thursday, amid many other different offerings and some self-directed times for staff, some grade level meeting times for staff. So lots of variety in what is offered throughout the week.
Breen, I've had a couple of questions from board members just about how we might use ESPs differently and coaches differently. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of conversations and some planning around that, but can you speak to that a little bit just to provide some clarity for our board members?
If you don't mind, Katie, do you mind? I know Katie's been doing a lot of the work on that. We've been doing a lot of dividing and conquering. And really, Katie put together some guidelines and ideas, a menu of how our ESPs might be of the best support. Do you mind jumping in, Katie?
I don't mind at all. We are actually going to be meeting with our ESPs on Wednesday to discuss some of the differences that they'll see from spring to fall in their role. So in spring, we did a lot of professional learning online with staff. And this fall, we have a lot of different and creative ways that we're going to utilize our ESP staff to support students. One of the changes that we've seen is that we can have our ESPs join teachers in their virtual sessions. And then Zoom has a really nice function of a breakout room. And so the teacher can break out certain groups of kids or adults to work together. And so the class can split and then practice some of their skills and then come back together. So we might see ESPs working in that capacity with smaller groups within those virtual learning sessions. We also have a lot of different materials, manipulative supplies that we are disseminating to our students to utilize at home. And so we anticipate our ESPs significantly assisting those processes. We may even have ESPs helping out with our food delivery. And so as that process changes and evolves, we could consider the ways that they could assist there. We know that in order to increase engagement, we contact families pretty regularly. And so we anticipate that ESPs could assist with those phone calls and making sure that our students are accessing all of their materials, accessing their classes. And there's really a wide range of potential roles that they could play. Those are a few of them.
Sounds good. I had a question going back to parent enrollment. And it was a question that actually was asked of me by a parent who discovered that a lot of the parents were not connected via email because all they have are phones, but they are connected via text. And I'm wondering if we have asked them to make a choice by reaching out to them via text messages.
You know, Janice, our community outreach specialists have been working really hard to get a hold of parents that are not using email or don't have emails listed in the system. And they assist them in not only creating an email address, but then learning to utilize it, because that's needed for many things in our district, and assist them in accessing Skyward. And so while we know that text may be more convenient, there are just some things that still need to be emailed. So our goal is to get everybody set up so that they have that for ongoing reasons, not just in the initial communication. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that absolutely does make sense. Thank you for that. And
Can I just ask, for the advisory committee, you need a board member? You're shaking your head, Art. I want to be that member.
For the focus group,
Yep,
yes, we'd like to have one board member participate.
put my name down.
Does
Thanks
the
for
board want to discuss that?
no,
But
I
does
think
anybody else want it?
Sounds good to me, and at least you'd be on a committee then.
thank you for volunteering, Patty. I think that's great. And I think you'll do a good job of representing, board and teacher interests and figuring out what really, what the data really says about how to proceed, at the beginning of October.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Any other comments under report to the superintendent's team? Any questions for the team?
Quick question. With the staff that's in the buildings today, are they starting to, well, obviously not today, but will they start to rearrange their classrooms in order to prepare for the students to return? Is that going to be their responsibility to space the desks out and coordinate their own individual classrooms?
I can speak to that. Some of that work started much sooner than today, where principals, when they reported back, they would walk the building with custodians. Some staff they reached out to sooner in case they wanted some more time. So that will absolutely be a collaborative effort, knowing that we want to have those spaces ready when kids return to school.
Any other questions?
Nope, that's it.
All right, seeing none, I can't believe it. It's only 8:24. If we hurry up, we can adjourn the meeting. Will someone make a motion to adjourn?
Could I ask a question first? Are we going into closed session?
No.
Could we go into closed session, just the board, to make a comment on or ask a question on the superintendent search? Just the board? Is that allowed?
I don't think so. I don't think at this point we have a reason to use closed session.
Okay, well then I may call people.
Well, why don't you call me first and we'll talk about it, okay? And then we can see whether or not, or how it should be handled.
All right.
All right, thank you, Mardell. Okay, would someone like a motion to adjourn?
I will.
Okay,
Okay, be it resolved that on the 10th day of August 2020, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education meeting is adjourned.
all right, roll call, please.
I'm going to start from the top. Krinsky,
Aye.
Garlovich.
Aye,
Am I getting better?
you're doing excellent.
Okay. Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed
Aye.
and Schumacher.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right, thank you, everyone. And we'll be getting in touch about the search firm interviews. Have a
Perfect.
great evening.